All right. So this is still the nutrition study grams of fat per day data. And I am going to copy this table from the word statistic down to the last number, the edge of that maximum. And should be able to copy or Control C or Command C on your device there. And I'm going to go over to my spreadsheet version of this, where I have that column of fat data. And I'm going to jump over here, let's say in the top of column C, and I'm just going to try pasting it in and see what happens. Ooh. So if you copied, so I tried to copy information from a website to a spreadsheet. Is a website a spreadsheet? Not really, right? So sometimes when we try to copy stuff from one type of application to another, weird shit can happen. It worked okay this time. If I tried to highlight too much stuff, the spreadsheet might get confused about what I'm trying to copy and do weird stuff on me. Like I'll just see if I can make it do something weird. If I accidentally like highlight from over here all the way across, or maybe up here and down, it might not like that. Oh, it liked it too. Okay, so I can't make it screw up today. Usually I can. Anyway, so I put those numbers in there. Last class, we looked at having the spreadsheet make those calculations for us. What are the pros and cons of StatKey versus the spreadsheet calculation? Pro, StatKey does it really fast and easy if you have the data in the right format in StatKey. So the challenge there is you got to get the data into StatKey. Once it's there, it's fast and easy. Con is if you need a different number of decimal places than StatKey gives you, you're out of luck with StatKey. So if somebody said, I got to have 5 decimal places on these numbers, Gary, I got to do it in a spreadsheet instead. So let's just compare what StatKey gave us to the spreadsheet. So I'm gonna highlight these guys here, and I'm gonna drag them down just a cell, just to make a note above here that this was StatKey calculations. So I'm just gonna type StatKey up here. And then over here, I'm gonna type spreadsheet. And I'm just gonna repeat these calculations to see if the spreadsheet agrees. Okay. Something go wrong, Sarita? Yours isn't pasting over? Okay, let me see. So I highlighted from the word statistic, right in the down lower, right there, to the end of the maximum number. And then try to copy that. And then go over to your spreadsheet. And then try to, you want to be in the same tab as your numbers. So go to your tab 2 at the bottom. Where are your fat numbers?
They're here.
Okay, in this one right here. So go to column C.
Oh, that's
okay, and then paste them in there. There we go. Okay, now we got them. Yeah. All right. So depending on the spreadsheet you used, it might do some weird stuff with the names. If I double click the border between the names and the numbers, it'll pick the right width so I can see the whole name of each of those statistics. Okay, so let's review the how to do these calculations on a spreadsheet. Sample size on a spreadsheet is a count. So I just, in that blank cell where I'm at now, I'm just going to type equals, start typing count. Computer gives me a whole bunch of options. I want the one that's just called count here. And then if I know there's nothing else in column A but my data in the word fat, I can just select A at the top to highlight everything. And then if you're an Excel user, close your parentheses, otherwise Excel will freak out on you. Enter or return on the keyboard. Anybody remember the command for mean? It's average. So I do equals and I start typing AVE. And there's a whole bunch of different ones. I need to pick the right one. And when you point to them, it tells you what it is. Average, sounds good. Numeric average value in a data set ignoring text. Yep, that's what I want. So I'm going to select average, then select the data. If you're not sure if there's anything else in that column, then what I did is dangerous. Instead, you start at the first number or the first thing and go all the way down to the last thing. So the first number is actually 57. And then a couple things to do. I could click and drag down to the bottom. That can take a while if it's a long data set. Anybody remember a shortcut to get to the bottom? Control Shift down arrow will automatically jump to the bottom of the list. I'm gonna do it the long way. Eek, right? If there were thousands, this would be painful. So we want to do it the most efficient way. Close parentheses, hit enter. No, I don't want to fill. Ooh, I hit yes by mistake. That's okay. We'll just delete those. Standard deviation equals, start typing ST for standard and stuff will pop up. And the first one, it says STDEV, standard deviation. That is a safe one to use, but my recommendation is to be extra cautious. Use the one with the S. That's the standard deviation for a sample. A sampled standard deviation is slightly different calculation than the population standard deviation. They give two slightly different numbers. We want the sample version. STDEV should do that, and STDEV.S should do that. Why are there different versions if they do the same thing? Google is trying to get along with Microsoft and Apple, so it has multiple commands in case you bring this spreadsheet from Google to Microsoft so that they understand each other. It's kind of why. Select your data, close your parentheses, hit enter. Minimum, pretty straightforward, equals min. Select your data, close your parentheses. Quartiles are a little trickier. We haven't done those yet on a spreadsheet. Equals, start typing quart, Q-U-A-R, and it gives me a few options. It gives me quartile, quartile EXE, or quartile INC. So the quartile on its own is safe. Technically, the better one to use is quartile INC, which basically, in a sense, includes kind of the endpoints of the data. So I would either select quartile or quartile INC. They do the same thing. Quartile EXE does something else. Don't do that one ever. I'm just going to go with quartile. That works here. And then here it wants the data and the quartile number. Now remember before, how many quarters are there? There are 4 quarters, but how many quartiles are there? There are 5 of them, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here I would have to first select the data, and then it showed me to put a comma, and it wants the quartile number. I want quartile number 1. So I just type a 1. Guess what we'll type for quartile 3? 3, yeah, no big deal. Median, we did that the other day. That is the median command. Data, close parentheses. Quartile 3 is just like quartile 1. I'm going to use the quartile command, data, comma, 3. Now, every once in a while, my fingers are a little too quick on the keyboard. Do you guys ever do that? You click or type too quick, and I forget to like type something. So if I don't complete the command correctly, it's going to give me an error, a message. And if I point to it, it's probably going to tell me wrong number of arguments. Arguments are the things you give it to make the calculation. It needed 2 pieces of information. I forgot to give it the second one. So all I have to do is sneak in there, put a comma and a 3. No, I don't want to autofill. I want the max next. Oops, equals max. Data, close parentheses, enter. All right, so did StatKey and the spreadsheet agree? Looks like I got the same set of numbers there, doesn't it? Few more decimal places on the mean and the standard deviation, but it did the same stuff. Just a warning about what I did here. Although everybody in the world calculates the mean the same way, everybody in the world calculates the sample standard deviation in the same way, not everybody in the world calculates the quartiles in the same way. So there will be some times where StatKey and Excel or Google Sheets will not agree on Q1 and Q3. And you'll see this in the homework, that on some problems, I give like 3 possible options for what Q3 is or Q1 is. That's because depending on the technology used to make that calculation, you will get a different answer sometimes. They'll be similar, they'll be in the ballpark, but they won't be the same number. Okay, so I'm just going to type a little note here. Warning. These will not always be the same. Depending on the technology used, depending on technology. Does anyone ever here use like a TI 84, 85, or 86 type calculator in their life? Some of you have. A TI can do statistics if you get all the numbers in there. It will almost always give you a different Q1 and Q3 than the spreadsheet or StatKey. Okay, the world did not agree on how to make those calculations. If you want to know why, buy me a cup of tea soon and I'll sit down and tell you, but it's not all that exciting. Okay, so Q1 and Q3 will sometimes be different numbers depending on the technology you used. And I'm not too worried about that. I'll always know when I see your work what you used, and if you're close but not exact, I can say, oh, they used a TI today. Oops, no big deal. All right. So let's see, what else did I want to talk about? All right, we're ready to talk about standard deviation. Okay. So again, pros and cons. StatKey is a wonderful tool. You just got to figure out how to get your data in there correctly. And the edit data button is the one to use. And also when you're in StatKey, let's go back here. You have to make sure you're using the right tool in StatKey. So you got to think about that before you click on one of those. And once you're in there, you have to make sure your data matches the way StatKey hoped to see it. Will that always happen? The answer is no. Sometimes you got to play with the data to make StatKey take it. Otherwise, StatKey gives you a quick set of graphs here and the summary statistics we need to do everything else. It's a little more work in a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet gives us more decimal places to work with when we need them. Okay, so we got a couple options. All right, what does standard deviation mean? Up next.